All right, so this battle is interesting because it's one that has what I would consider like a timeline to it for me. So, when initially this battle was proposed to me, I was like, I wasn't sold on it. I was like, how does Vampire Hunter D compete with a powerhouse like Sentry from Marvel Comics? But then I read the light novels for Vampire Hunter D. I looked into it and I was like, yeah, never mind. This is a completely different conversation than I thought it would be. So I went from one side stomping to potentially the opposite. So before we get started, if you like content like this, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything. YouTube can be weird about alerting you guys sometimes. Also, check out the coffee shop members in the video description. These are content creators that make similar content to me, and you guys will like their content as well. So definitely go support them as well. But yeah, let's begin. So first, I'm going to talk about Sentry. Who is Sentry for those that don't know? Because it's possible maybe there's some Vampire Hunter fans here and not Marvel fans. But Sentry is a character named Robert Reynolds, who was one of the first superheroes in Marvel 616. But his power, which resulted from an experiment that was supposed to be like just an amped version of Captain America, but it turned out to be crazier than that. It went wild to the point that there was like this darkness born from the subconsciousness of Reynolds called the Void that could be potentially the end of everything. And the threat of the Sentry is that whenever the Sentry uses his power, the Void could come out at any time if he doesn't check him. So, in order to avoid anything horrible, they actually went and did a mind eraser on Sentry so that everyone forgot who he was. Of course, later on, Sentry negs this, remembers, and returns as the Sentry. Now, what's the Sentry capable of? Now, in his initial run, Sentry was credited with a power that basically, like, his cells and atoms were skipping ahead in time. So he was constantly in flux and technically was there, but was not there, which allowed him to be, like, ahead of everybody else. It was really weird, but kind of dope at the same time. They never really elaborate on this later, but it was kind of, I guess, supposed to explain why he was so powerful and fast. But Sentry has always been considered like the higher end of Herald tier in Marvel. Casually can compete with characters like Terrax, Hulk, Thor, Silver Surfer, and the likes. He's actually fought against the Void before, which, like I said, is considered the end of all things, which should include the Marvel universe, which is multiversal in nature, bare minimum. Sentry, as well, his power has been compared to Galactus. In his recent solo run, Sentry was actually shown merging with the Void. Essentially what happened is Doctor Strange constructed a mental sphere inside the consciousness of Sentry to house him. So what would happen is he would go inside that mind every 24 hours and live in the Sentry world where Sentry and Void could function without threatening all of reality. But Cranio, one of his ops from back in the day, switches out Sentry and Robert Reynolds. Sentry comes back to the real world, and then he eventually has to merge with the Void to like beat Cranio and survive, and doing so causes potentially the strongest version of Sentry, which would be Merge Sentry. Of course, this doesn't include outside amps like Death Seed Sentry and whatnot, but Merge Sentry was just Void and Sentry coming together, and at that point Sentry said he felt like that was real power, so that wasn't stronger power than he had compared technically to anything shown before. And like I said, this includes going beyond even Herald tier and challenging power sources like Galactus and other abstract characters. So his reality warping power, his speed, his raw ability to just basically be able to brawl with anyone, his high regen, all this makes Sentry a dangerous character for anyone to go up against. But today, he's facing a unique character, only their second time on this channel. And this, of course, is Vampire Hunter D. All right, so I'm gonna kind of translate this for the comic book fans that are used to this kind of power scaling, because it's different depending on the verse. Like, some people have come to my channel when I introduce new characters or verses, and they just don't really get my phrases. And so, likewise, I'm gonna just go ahead and break down what Vampire Hunter D, his attributes translate to in comic scaling terms. Right? AP, he can destroy concepts, attack concepts, and like life and death literally, and has attacks that transcend even that, destroy them completely, and destroy characters that can neg that. So basically what this means is he's gone up against characters, and when he fights, he literally not only cuts you physically, but he's cutting down on an astral and conceptual level, cutting life itself. And when he does this, he fought a character who had evolved beyond the font of life, which is what it's like the concept is called, being damaged. So basically, conceptually harming life won't be enough to put him down. D still put him down. He had another attack that transcended that put him down, which is ridiculous. And he also fought beings made of death itself that were deathless in nature, and he could one-shot them as well. Another thing he has, insane anti-regen. This is pertaining to the fact that he can fight beings who, like I said, can regen from conceptual level attacks, and he can completely negate and shut off your regeneration, to the point they question if even like someone like God could regen from Vampire Hunter D cutting, which is absurd. He also is not bound to time, the future, past, or events in creation. The Akashic Records, which show everything that's ever happened, could happen, all of creation. Vampire Hunter D is beyond that, and literally was shown that his own raw power and abilities usurps the Akashic Records, which literally just a small leak could completely warp all of creation. Vampire Hunter D has also completely survived being subjected to nothingness. This level of nothingness was described as being beyond any mathematical concepts ever. So any conceptual mathematical solutions, problems, formulas, they can't apply to nothingness. It's beyond all that. Of course, this would include dimensions, all that, even higher dimensional numbers and constructs that scalars consider to be like levels of outer versal. These would all be usurped by this, and he casually got out of it. Overpowered it, got out of it, whatever you want to call it. Too fast. This obviously does also apply to speed. Yeah, I mean, overall, I could keep going. Like, his attacks, range doesn't matter because he alters. The range, he has complete temporal spatial manip. So, like, his attack, if he's trying to stab you with a 3-foot-long sword, right, he could be 50 feet away, instantly stab you. Doesn't make sense logically, right? He's not bound by logic in his attacks and his moves and power. And this allows him to completely just basically have limitless range on his attacks. Faster than infinite speed. Obviously, I've already gone over the higher tier speed he should have. But there's things like him being able to attack someone who put an infinity between them and he instantly hit him. It's just crazy. So overall, Vampire Hunter D is very slept on for what he brings to the table. I don't see him talked about enough. My last video on him didn't get enough views. Hopefully y'all go back and watch it. But yeah, especially his light novel stuff, absolutely absurd. So who do I think wins? Like I said, at first, I thought Sentry was going to wash his ass. I thought he was faster, stronger, would be able to neg. And Sentry does have high tier regen, high tier reality warping, negation, and abilities. But Vampire Hunter D in his own verse, in the light novels particularly, showcased, in my opinion, superior hacks in these categories. He will be able to one-shot the regeneration. Sentry's going to struggle regenning from anything Vampire Hunter hits him with. He's faster, in my opinion, than Sentry. I mean, like, literally being able to escape nothingness beyond any mathematically conceptual speed, anything like that. He's just a monster. In the end, I see Vampire Hunter D actually being too much for Sentry, and I see him taking down the Sentry. I think his hacks and counter hacks are too much and do scale a bit higher. In the end, I favor Vampire Hunter D in this matchup. Now, if this surprised you, like it did me doing the research, you should comment down below if Vampire Hunter D should do a Marvel Gauntlet. If this gets over 400 likes, I'll do a Vampire Hunter D runs a Marvel Gauntlet. But besides that, thank you guys for watching. It's been your boy YFE, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.
It's your boy, Sir Splash. Say you're gonna beat Splash, put it on the Bible. Whole game's trash, boy. Put it on a cycle. Money talks when you talk, really, I don't understand. Said he wants smoke, but they all do the running, man.